Hello and welcome to VVork. I'm Brian Watrous, and this is part 58 in a 10-part video series in which we're learning how to automate using vRealize Orchestrator. As you can see from the title of this particular video, what we're going to be talking about this go-round is different types of integrations using vRO. Let's jump in and see how to integrate using vRO. All right, so what do I mean by integrations? By that, what I mean is vRO is able to talk to other systems in your IT infrastructure, and conversely, other IT systems are able to talk to Orchestrator. Now, to make clear the distinction between these, when we talk about integrations in Orchestrator, you'll hear us talking about the difference between something called a southbound integration versus, you can probably guess what the next is. We'll see the next one in a moment. But let's talk first about southbound integration. What is that? Well, what southbound integration is, it's probably something you're already doing. Have you ever written a workflow and had that workflow call something such as a workflow to create a virtual machine in vCenter? Well, what you're doing in that case is southbound integration. Your Orchestrator workflow is going through an internal API, our plugin API. All the plugins that you've ever downloaded for Orchestrator adhere to that API, and your workflow going through that API is able to do things like go to vCenter and request a host be put into maintenance mode, or go to vCloud Director and request a deployment of a vApp, and so forth. But in each of these cases, whether we're talking to vCenter or vCloud Director or Cisco UCS or REST or whatever, in each of these cases, each of these plugins, you do not need to know anything about the Orchestrator plugin API. The people who write the plugins need to know the API. You don't. So in this first column of plugins, you'll notice that I have listed a number of different VMware products. Many of the plugins that you can download for Orchestrator are plugins that enables Orchestrator to talk to other VMware products. So your workflow going through the plugin API is able to do things such as go to vCenter and request that a new cluster be created. Again, from the developer's perspective, it's pretty straightforward. You just simply find the workflow in the vCenter plugin that you want to call, and you simply call that from your Orchestrator workflow. Now, the second column of plugins that you see here are representative of another class of plugins that are available for Orchestrator. And those are the plugins that are available to communicate with external systems from companies other than VMware. So for instance, Infoblox has a plugin to speak to their IP address management system. F5 has a plugin to allow you to talk to their load balancer. Cisco allows you to talk to their UCS infrastructure, and Microsoft Active Directory, we've got a plugin for them to talk to Active Directory. And again, from the Orchestrator workflow developer's perspective, they don't need to know all the complexity that these plugins speak. They don't need to know how to use the API. They just know that if they drag a workflow, for instance, the create computer and Active Directory workflow, if they drag that into their workflow, then they're doing southbound integration to, in that case, Microsoft Active Directory. Now, the third column of plugins that you see listed here don't talk to VMware products. They don't talk to non-VMware products. Instead, they're designed to talk to products that don't have their own specific API. So SOAP, REST, SSH, PowerShell, and so forth are all essentially protocols that are widely supported throughout the various software and hardware systems that you'll find in your IT environment. For example, with the REST plugin, you can talk to things such as Linux machines. With the REST plugin, you can talk to things such as many routers and switches support REST. With the REST plugin, you can talk to lots of different both VMware products and non-VMware products, provided they have a REST API. For instance, at the time of this recording, there currently is not a plugin for VMware NSX-T. So while it'd be nice if there was such a plugin, the absence of it doesn't stop me dead in my tracks. Instead, I just use the REST client to talk directly to the NSX-T manager server. So where possible, I try to find a plugin from one of these first two columns because those are designed to talk to something specific. But if there is no specific plugin, I will go ahead and use one of these plugins over here in the third column to talk to whatever the system may be. All right, so that in a nutshell is what southbound integrations look like. And again, southbound integration is what the majority of Orchestrator developers are doing. But there's another type of integration called northbound integration. And that's where an external system calls Orchestrator. Now here in this particular screenshot, I say that northbound is specifically about calling Orchestrator workflows. It's actually more than that. It's really external systems calling out to Orchestrator, maybe to run a workflow, maybe to cancel a workflow, or maybe to do something completely unrelated to workflows. There are lots of things that Orchestrator does other than running and monitoring and canceling workflows. But using workflow execution as an example, the vRO client that you use to develop your workflows, you know that can also run workflows. Well, the way the vRO client, which is an external tool, is able to do that is by going through the REST API that's exposed by the Orchestrator server. Now, don't confuse the REST client plugin with the Orchestrator server's REST API. The REST client plugin is used when you write a workflow that's going to talk to some server that speaks REST. The REST API that Orchestrator exposes is used by clients such as these to do things in Orchestrator. So the vRO client can use Orchestrator's REST API, but so can other tools such as the vSphere web client. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but in the vSphere web client, if you right-click something such as a host or a VM or a data store, a menu pops up and the very last menu item allows you to kick off Orchestrator workflows. vRealize automation can kick off Orchestrator workflows. Again, it does so by going through the same REST API that Orchestrator exposes. Or you may perhaps want to create your own interface to Orchestrator. Perhaps your company has your own custom web portal that you've already spent a lot of money to create and you spend a lot of time training your employees how to use. Instead of having the users use yet another interface like the vRO client or the vSphere web client or VRA, you can create a web portal using essentially whatever web framework you want, whatever programming languages you want, as long as they can act as a REST client to our REST API. So again, there are essentially two types of integrations. There are southbound integrations and northbound integrations. Now you know a bit about each of those. If you have any questions about northbound versus southbound or what any of these plugins do, please drop a comment down in the YouTube comment section and we'll take a look at this issue deeper based on whatever questions you ask.